Hello, DevOps. My name is Will Ezell. I am the CTO of dotCMS. dotCMS is, for those who don't know, is a web content management system. And so what's the difference? Why do we need another web content management system? People came up to us and said, you're one of a million. Someone asked us what's changed in web content management world in 10 years. Well, what's changed in the content management world in 10 years is that technologies have evolved. Enterprises are more and more, they're focusing on their end users, their customers' experience. And dotCMS out of the box has been developed to build really compelling customer experiences. The idea of dotCMS is not to be a portal. Okay, there's plenty of portals. It's not to be a document management system. There are plenty of those. But instead, it's to be a seamless web content management system to provide one site, many sites for large-scale enterprises. So what I'm going to show today, we're going to be developing a Spring MVC app and deploy it into dotCMS using OSGi. And we're going to be running that in a system that can then be managed by business users, by people who are more interested in the look and the feel and the content than they are about the technology. And we're going to then deploy that remotely to a remote server. And at the end of this, we're giving away 10 Chromecasts, which is, I think, a very important note. There are tickets that you can get that we're going to do a drawing at the end. So if you need a ticket, raise your hand, and Jason Smith will come around and grant you tickets. All right, so in 3 minutes, dotCMS. dotCMS is, regardless of the product name, which is a very long story, is a Java-based content management system. It was born from a web application agency actually called dotMarketing, which is where the dot comes from, but has really been built to help web developers and Java developers deliver really compelling experiences, right? So we're open source. We're on GitHub. You go to github.com/dotCMS, and you can actually just fork the project and begin playing around. dotCMS, as opposed to some of the other content management systems out there, gives you full control over the view and the presentation layer. So from the view and the presentation layer, you can implement any HTML, any JavaScript framework, any CSS framework. If a new JavaScript or CSS framework, the kind of flavor of the year, comes out next year, dotCMS can handle that as well. And so on our site, I think there are 13 starter themes for a number of different frameworks. But those are just examples. You can basically take those or begin to implement or roll your own CSS framework. How many of you all are web developers versus Java developers? Okay, good. Kind of a mixed audience here. So I think that this is a very important feature for web developers. dotCMS does a very nice job of trying to get out of the way for those folk. And we are, again, as I mentioned before, we're built specifically for websites, for web applications, and for content delivery, from remoting content, what have you. So what I'm going to talk about today, so all of this is available on our website, right? I don't want to, I've done a lot of traveling, and I do a lot of, sales pieces, so if I drop into sales mode, just shake your head and be like, let's get down to code, because that's what we're here for. But what I'm going to talk about today is how easily it is to extend dotCMS to talk to your enterprise systems, right? So in a number of different use cases, we go into a large-scale enterprise, and they have existing code bases, they have existing enterprise systems, they have well-defined APIs into those systems, and they like dotCMS, but they ask, how am I going to get that into dotCMS? And so we're going to talk today a little bit about the plugin architecture. So the plugin architecture of dotCMS allows you to customize and deliver applications without making changes to the core code, right? Which is a very important fact for upgrades and maintenance of the system itself. We have two types of plugins in dotCMS. Plugins can be written as static plugins, which are build time plugins. Those plugins can override server configuration. They can also override just about any class or any file within the dotCMS WAR or web root. So that's a very helpful tool if you have some specific file that you need to place in a certain place for loading. You can use a static plugin. We also have, and this is what we're going to talk about today, we also have OSGi-based plugins which are dynamic and provide extension points into the system, specifically around content. You can extend into workflows, so you can have a specific workflow action that when a user in the UI presses a button will fire off some Java code that can do some remoting or maybe even post a piece of content into a Solr index or something like that. We have an extension point in servlets. You can write servlets and expose those to the front end. You can write Jersey RESTful APIs, expose those to the front end. You can also write Spring web apps, and you can deploy just about any Java library in an OSGi container. The OSGi container is dynamic. We're using Felix under the covers. We have a little bit of customization there to allow you to override any class within dotCMS using the OSGi plugin, which is really helpful for maintenance for us. But OSGi, as a technology, as I'm sure many of you know, is a very modular framework for providing separate class paths and preventing collisions between different libraries and being able to provide Java applications in a very safe and reloadable way. So what are we going to do today? What we're going to do is a little proletariat. It's a little bit, there's a lot of really sexy technologies going on here at this conference, but I think what we're going to do is a very basic example of how to build a Spring web app in dotCMS and how to hook that up in dotCMS and in the front end and use the tools in the front end to deliver that web app. This is a CRUD application, and it's not sexy, but it is something that we all do or all have done, I think, in the past, or are seen done, and it's a very common need again and again and again. So what we're going to do today, and we're going to dive into code after this slide, and I'm going to jump back and forth between code, and at the end of this I can take questions regarding the code. I'm going to do this a little bit on the fly, so I have the code written, but we're going to take a look and deploy this really on the fly, and hot deploy this remotely, and we can even debug and take a look and step through some of the code pieces as well, which is a very helpful feature. So what we're going to do today in dotCMS is build a custom content type in dotCMS called person. dotCMS has a user object, which is really the kind of authentication layer. We're going to build a custom content type called person that wraps that user object, and basically you can use it to extend the user object just like you can extend any type of content in dotCMS. So the use case for this is many times you have a website, you have intranet users, you have third-party users that need to create an account, you have specific account information that you want to collect that's not part of that user authentication system. And so what you're going to want to do is wrap that user and be able to create a custom content type, sort of decorate the user object and still use the user object as the authentication system. Now the reason for this is because the authentication system is a very core component to dotCMS. Basically every object in dotCMS is permissioned, and every content pull in dotCMS is permissioned. So that even in dynamic lists, when you go to Lucene or Elasticsearch in dotCMS and pull back a list of 20 pieces of news, if the user doesn't have permission to those news items, they're not going to see it. So we're going to build this user content object, this wrapper piece of content. Then we're going to build a Spring controller to be able to add new users to the system and add and manage the content around those new users. Now, dotCMS makes a strict separation, and this might be easier with a demonstration, but in dotCMS world, there is a front end and there is a back end. Okay, so your front end is where dotCMS gets out of the way. This is our example site, and it's Bootstrap. It's just an example site. The back end is really admin tools. It's portlet based. The framework, and in the OSGi framework, you can actually deliver custom applications as portals into the back end. But the back end is very strictly separated from the front end. And so what we're going to be doing today is building a way to edit content on the front end versus the normal way of editing content on the back end, which is a very common use case. Then, once we have the Spring controller and we have it saving the piece of content, what we're going to do is build what we call a view tool. Now, a view tool is a velocity. Our templating language is Apache Velocity. A view tool is a standard Apache Velocity way of exposing Java to the front end, to web developers, to your development team to be able to expose APIs that are written in Java. So what it does is it really strictly separates the idea of Java code from the idea of the web development. And these view tools can be mocked up. These view tools can be stubs that return stub objects until they're developed. But these view tools are where you're going to plug into, let's say you have an external middleware bus, and you're going to plug in to do, give me this person information out of your ERP system. It's going to return that. In your view tool, you're going to use that API that you develop to, iterate over the person information that you get back. After that, we'll take a look at the velocity code that builds these editing forms. Then, after we have the editing forms, we're going to hot deploy the Spring controller into the local dotCMS application. And then finally, if we have time, because I do want to provide time for questions. If we have time, I'm going to show you how you can put all of these components. They're all very different objects in the system. All of these components together in a bundle that can actually be pushed from a staging environment to a UAT environment, and then from a UAT environment to a production environment. So you're really pushing an entire Spring web app, including all the assets surrounding that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a custom content type called person, right? And I've started that in the system for the sake of time. That's not it. Okay, so I'm going to authenticate in dotCMS here and take a look. For us in dotCMS world, content types we call them structures. And you get to define what these structures are based upon your domain or your needs. So what we're going to do now is build this content type called person, right? And the person, if we take a look at it, is going to have different properties than, say, a news item would, which is a pretty obvious fact. But a news item is going to have, a story, an image, a byline, versus a person, which is going to have just a subset of fields here. So really, when you build content types in dotCMS, you're building databases of content. Okay, so these databases of content, when people are editing content, they're actually adding, think of it, this is all happening virtually under the covers, but they're adding rows to this database of content. They're managing these rows of content. All the content's versioned, all the content is searchable. You get to specify how it's searchable. We have Elasticsearch running before the content is persisted and indexing all the content, all the documents as well. So I'm going to go ahead here and add 2 new fields. And the first field I'm going to add is called Notes. And you can choose when you're adding field, you can choose the form type or what you want the user to see in the user control. And this is on the back-end editing screen. Notes, we'll have a WYSIWYG field here. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to add another field called tags, for example. And there's all kinds of fields within the system, binary, images. And basically, again, what you're doing is building the content types that you need in the system. So let me do tags. Oops. Okay. Bear with me here. And you can choose when you're developing the actual form itself or the content type, you can choose what's going to be shown in the listing, what's going to be searchable. You can even build custom controls for the back end people editing content that can hook into third-party systems to pull in if you need some external data to tie it in. Okay, so we've created this content type called person. So that's the first step in our process here. Okay, so the second step in our process is to create a Java pojo. So that person that's the content type we're going to use to extend the user object. What we're going to do now is create a Java pojo that includes the person content and also includes the user authentication object. And what the pojo is going to do is bring those two pieces together so we can access them on the front end of dotCMS and spit out properties of either of those. So the pojo is it's a clean pojo. Let me find it. Okay, so the pojo is a person. It has two attributes, has a user object and has an underlying content object. So the content objects in dotCMS are really just maps. So you can access any property and dive down into any property just using, you get the map and then you can call the property just even by name at that point. So there's no magic in this pojo, pretty boring. But that's going to be the glue that brings the user and the actual piece of content that we're wrapping together. Okay, so the third thing we're going to do, and this is where things start to happen a little bit, is develop a Spring controller. Okay, so there is no, this is really a very basic Spring MVC controller. We're using annotations to wire the paths, and it has a number of methods here. So for example, this first one is load, right? And load, and you pass in the user ID. Obviously what that's going to do is load the person object, stick it into the velocity context, and then deliver you to the view, right? And that view, it's returned here as a string edit. What dotCMS will do automatically, we've written a custom view resolver. You can write your own, but the view resolver, for those of you who know Spring, basically will return to you the page path, and then edit.html. Save. This is a method that's actually going to take the person and save the person. Okay, so I was debating whether we show the form first or we show this first. Let me see, hold on one second. Oh no, the method I want to show you actually is this save and add. So basically what this is going to do is allow the front end user to add a new piece of content and a new user right from the front end. Okay? And I'm going to walk through this method and hold questions, and we can talk about it. We can jump back and talk about it at the end of the talk. But the first thing we do in walking through this method, and you can see, the path is mapped via the request mapping. We're getting in all the request parameters as a map. We can iterate over that map, get the values out of them. But the first thing we do is build the user object in dotCMS. And the way you do this is by calling the API locator get user API. And this is dotCMS convention. The API locator dot get content API, get template API, get URI API, get virtual link API. That's how you'd get a handle on all of the APIs, all the public APIs in dotCMS. That's really how you're going to interact and how you should interact with anything in the system. So what we're doing here is we're getting the user API, and we're using that to create a user. And we pass in the email that's been passed in. So to create a user, all you need is a user ID. We're passing in a null, and it's going to set it automatically. And then we're passing in the email, and that's going to give us back a user object. Then we're going to set the properties on the user object. We're going to go first name, last name, password. This password will be encrypted in the database. It's not showing there, but that password is stored encrypted. And then we're going to save the user, and that persists the user. It's pretty simple. Again, this is pretty straightforward stuff. It's a little boring, but I think it's this straightforwardness and this, wow, that just kind of worked. That's something I think we try to do in the system. So I think that it's actually kind of a good thing here that this is as simple as it looks. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to get the user, this brand new user that we're creating has no permissions, right? So it's just a user object. What we're going to do is load a role, and in dotCMS you can build any role that you need and permission that however you want to, but we're going to load the intranet role. And so users who have this role can log in on the front end and actually access the intranet. Because everything's permission-based, you can access, there can be news, for example, that, or, customized documents that you can't see if you don't have that role, but you can if you do. So we're going to add that role to the user. That will save that role to the user. Then the third thing we're going to do is get a new piece of content. And in dotCMS, they're called contentlets. And then we're going to set the property on this content, and it's a string properties. And we have convenience methods, set date property, set string property, set end property. We're trying to make the map a little bit type safe to help, obviously for type safety there. We're going to set what's called the structure inode, and this is the actual structure. In this case, it's the person structure that this content is a part of. And we're going to set the language to English. dotCMS can support multiple languages, unlimited amount of languages. In this case, we're going to set it to English. And then what we're going to do is take the fields of that particular piece of content, loop over those fields, and get the key value pair out of the map, the request map, and set the properties that we got from the user, right? And once we've done that, and obviously the way you do that is you get the content API and you set the particular property for this new piece of content. Once you've done that, you can call content API check-in. So the check-in method is a way overloaded method, probably one of the most important methods in the entire system. You can build hooks on the check-in method that fire either before or after a piece of content's checked in. You can build workflow actions that fire automatically when a piece of content's checked in or on a timed basis after a piece of content has been checked in. You could do things with that like marketing automation, automatically send out an email, for example, when a particular user has entered user information. And in fact, if you go to our website and do the trial license, that's exactly what we've done. We're using it to generate the actual license, encrypt, build the license key, and send that out. Finally, what we do is we return, once the content has been indexed in Elasticsearch, and this is a little bit nasty code that needs to be refactored, but what we do is we check to see whether the content has been indexed by Elasticsearch, right? So again, Elasticsearch is a layer on top of our content store, and all content in that is searchable via loosing query, via RESTful API. We have to wait till that comes back for this content to actually be visible on the front end. What we do is we store all of the content, pointers to the content in Elasticsearch. We get the pointers to the content, and the way the architecture works is we go to cache, and we pull that particular content object from cache. If it's not in cache, we'll build a content object, stick it in cache, and return that back. And so really, once that cache is loaded, there's no performance penalty, or a very minor performance penalty in building that and returning that content object. Finally, what we're doing is a redirect to the index page, which is just a listing page. We're using this math random to do cache busting, so that way you won't get a cache copy of the page. So that's step 2, right? Or step 3, excuse me. That's step 3, where we actually built the Spring controller. There's some other methods in that Spring controller. There's an edit method. There's a load method that we took a look at. But I just wanted to walk through that add method. The next step in our process is to build a view tool. Now, view tools are what I was speaking about earlier. It's the way on the front end you can build, as a Java developer, tools that your web developers can use to access enterprise-type systems. View tools can call web services. View tools can call external databases, messaging buses. View tools can just about, you're in Java, and so you can basically interact in any way that you need to and return whatever objects you need to build the right front end. View tools are very simple classes. Let me pop open. In this case, we called it the person tool. Okay, so this person tool has an init method where we get a system user, and we basically build a list just for convenience of 2 fields that we specifically use in this particular class. But then you have a method called getPeople. And in Velocity, the way that this gets called, and the way it gets called by your web developers, it's basically a call like this. People tool, people, and then you can pass a filter, you can pass a limit, and you can pass a start, and you can pass a limit. This method's been built so it can paginate over lists of people, a little bit scalable, probably didn't need to be for this example. But it's a very easy call to make for your end user web developers. And that's the point of this, is to try to, as Java developers, to build these tools that your front-end web developers can use and interact with systems in ways that you get to define by your business rules. So the getPeople loads the users by name using the filter and start and limit. It then adds those people to a list, and then for each of those persons, it goes and actually loads the piece of content associated with that person, sets it, and then returns that entire list to the end user for use. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. Okay. So finally, one thing actually I do want to show you on the view tool, and this is an important point, is that basically you define via OSGi what that particular view tool key. This is how you wire the view tool into dotCMS itself. You wire that view tool using this key here, and this will actually activate the view tool. And the view tool can be activated on the session, it can be activated on the request, it can be activated in just about any way. It can be activated actually in the application, which is a singleton pattern here. Okay. So now we have our view tool, and what we're going to do now is build the view in HTML in Velocity. Okay, so dotCMS has a web dev server built into it, and let me log into dotCMS here. Here I am. Here's the folder structure of dotCMS. And here underneath the people man, this is where our pages and what are called VTLs, which are velocity templates. This is where these live. What I can do with Aptania is I can mount the entire repository, mount the repository, and edit these just directly in line. So here are these VTLs. If we take a look at this add VTL, you can see here that it's a really basic form. It's a bootstrap form. You can use, again, just about any framework that you want to build out these forms. And the beauty of it is at this point, you're in a place where your web developers can begin to engage with the system. You're in a place where you can begin to allow people to make changes to look and feel. If they want a 1-column design or a 2-column design, your web developers can take over here. All they have to do is make that post and get back the response and away your app goes. So this is the add form. What I'm going to do now is actually build this plugin. And the way you load an OSGi plugin, you can load it 2 ways. You can load it via a RESTful. Oh, is it running? Hang on. Let me undeploy that. You can run it via a RESTful API, or you can just drop the jar right into the Felix load directory. This will automatically load the OSGi plugin. And the beauty of that is you can set that up on an NFS mount, and you can, if you're running a cluster of dotCMSs, you can just drop it in singly, and it'll automatically load that into all of the dotCMS instances at once. So let me do here, I'm going to do an undeploy. And so what you can see here is we just undeployed this particular OSGi plugin. our activator, remove the tool. It actually destroyed the Spring servlet. Deploying it is as easy as that. We're moving to a Maven-based and Gradle-based build script. We haven't done that yet. This OSGi framework is new for us. It's only about 8 months old, but it's very, very powerful. Everything is moving that direction in our world, and Maven and Gradle, we see them as a way to solve dependency management, obviously, and build management. Very easy tools to get involved with. So if I refresh that, now we have our People Spring example running as an OSGi plugin. We take a look at the site browser. We take a look at the PeopleMan, the index page here, and we pull the index page. And what the index page is doing is pulling. I clicked through one. Hang on one sec. What the index page is doing is pulling a list of people within the system. And this list is a combination of both the users and the piece of content. And again, the beauty of the WebDAV interface is you can begin to allow users to edit these particular content pieces and to begin to decorate these particular content pieces right from the UI. So for example, this is the listing for that People Manager. And if I take a look, let me get my screens set. This is the listing of that People Manager. Let's say I'm a business user and I want to sort of indicate or put some text or change the look and feel of that particular page. What I can do in the system, hang on, I'm having window mess here. Okay, so what I can do in the system is log in, and again with the proper permissions, let me go to the People Manager. I can take a look at that page, and let's say I want to add a new piece of content, or I want to make a change to the particular page. As a business user, I can come in, and it's permission-based, and I can say, okay, I'm going to add a new piece of content, and say, people listing, and you get a nice WYSIWYG to fill in. You can say, below is a listing. Of people, whatever you want to do, you can add, you can add imagery here, whatever you want to do, and you drop that into your page, and basically what you have is a web app that the Chrome around the web app or the frame around the web app, your end user and your business users have full control of. Another example of that is that let's say you wanted to change the entire look of the feel of the page. You can choose a new template and apply that template onto the page, and it's going to entirely change the look and the feel of the page. And so when I refresh these, the page, why am I logged in everywhere? Hang on. Stop logging in. Okay. Refresh. When I refresh that page, you can see that I have an entirely new look and feel. Right? And let me show you, if I come back. So what that's doing is giving your business users the control that they need, giving you as a web developer, your web developers the tools they need in Java to develop these web apps, and giving you, the Java developer, the separation to build your APIs in ways that your web developers can actually use them. So what I'm going to show you now is a new feature of dotCMS. So we built that plugin and we hot deployed that plugin in our locally running CMS. That plugin, actually before I get to bundling this up together, if we take a look at that person tool, we have a couple other methods here. So we have a getWinner method here. This is an example, obviously, of it's going to randomize the numbers for those of you who have taken the tickets. It's going to randomize the number and give you all, pick the winners of the Chromecast. It also has a method called get cats, and I don't know if you all have been around our booth, but we've been demoing we were thinking that dotCMS is actually, the CMS stands for Cat Management System. We were putting out cat YouTube videos showing how easy it is to drop those onto your page. But what you can do, again, it is through that API, you can call person tool cats and go ahead and save that. And what that's going to do, oh, I don't have an internet connection. Well, what that's going to do is call that API and spit out exactly what that API is saying. And the beauty of running in an environment like this is it is an OSGi plugin, but I can, I can step through this string x equals, test. I can drop a breakpoint here and actually just step through, even though this is an OSGi plugin, when it renders, I didn't drop a breakpoint. When it renders, I'm going to be returned to Clips and have access to step through any code or make any changes I need to make to any code. So it's a very easy way to develop both OSGi plugins and to be able to debug those OSGi plugins as well. Okay, so finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. Actually, let me get rid of that and get rid of my cats. And I'm going to take this page and these other pages, and you can see, again, I'm in what's called edit mode, and I can browse this Spring web app very much like it's a page in dotCMS. All the views are rendering properly, and you can see I can edit what I have permission to edit. So what I'm going to do is take this particular web app, and I'm going to now, so what I've done so far is actually built this OSGi plugin. I've built the pages and the views for this plugin. I'm going to take this plugin and I'm going to build what's called in dotCMS as a bundle. And a bundle is a zipped up package of all these objects put together that can then be shipped remotely to a remote server or can be reloaded or uploaded into another dotCMS instance. And the way you do that is you actually just right click, and every object in dotCMS has this add to bundle feature. And you get to say, okay, I'm going to add this to the People Manager bundle. And that's going to add that folder and all the assets in that folder to this People Manager bundle. And I can then browse to the other piece of this component that I just built was this person structure, and I can add that to my bundle. It's automatically going to have the bundle name there. Add that to my bundle, and then finally I'm going to go to the dynamic plugins, and I'm going to right click on this and add that to my People Manager bundle. And so what I've done there is built a bundle of all those different objects put together that I can actually, from here, if I had an internet connection, I had a server set up remotely, but if from here I can actually publish this to a different environment, or I can download it and upload it into a different environment and deploy it remotely. And you get to define what those environments are within the system. Everything in dotCMS, as I was mentioning, is permission-based. What I'm logged in as here is the admin user, obviously. And I have all these features, and I have bundles and dynamic plugins. As a limited user, you can log in, and you're going to see a much reduced subset of all of these features. And this is all manageable by admins, but you can see if I click around now, I have a very limited subset. I only have access to a single folder. And from the Content tab, I only have access to a single document type. So that's an important component for the system. Again, everything is permission-based from the admin tools and even to the front-end content as well. So, guys, I was going to publish this or remote publish this to another server. I don't have do I have internet access? Let me see. Hang on. I'm not going to have it, am I? No. it's gone. Famous, never rely on the internet on a presentation. I should know. But what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to open this up for any questions regarding the system, any questions regarding this web app. One thing I think that's important is all of this code is on GitHub, and I've made some changes. Let me see. I've made some changes here, and I'll commit these changes once I'm done, but this code is all available on our GitHub repository. The People Manager is available, and as is the dotCMS system itself. You can see these are the GitHub repository, and that's the People Manager example. If you all have any questions, feel free to let me know. I don't want to keep you all too late because I think the other presentation's serving beer, and we're all tired and ready for some of that. But if you all have any questions, feel free to let me know. I mean, raise your hand, any thoughts or anything you see. Sure.
I think, I'm not sure that I saw this correctly, but what I understand is that you are like live editing the velocity templates.
That's right.
How does that work? Because like we use them, and I've always understood that you need to like reload your entire application for them to.
No, you don't need to reload. The reason why we're in Velocity is because you don't need to reload your entire application. All of the pieces in dotCMS are dynamic. Those are all, the Velocity templates are cached, but as soon as you live edit those Velocity templates, they're refreshed, and that particular object is kicked out of cache. And it's a very lightweight templating framework. It's been very flexible for us. We haven't really found anything that can't be done in it. Any other? Yep. The question is how and where we stored our data. So we store our data. We store our data in kind of three tiers, right? So there's the Elasticsearch level, which actually indexes the data and has a representation of the data itself. There is the cache level that is actually loaded. Below that, that's relational database. We support 4 different databases. The relational database table is it's a fat contentlet table. What we're looking at doing here moving forward is pushing that store off to a NoSQL solution versus storing it in the database. There's a couple ways you can store big things like big pieces of content in like dotCMS in the database. One is a key value pair. Obviously, you can use a field that's a map or an XML representation of the data. What we did for type safety is we have a very big table of the data. So there is a limit where we are right now. Is there is a limit to the number of fields that can be added. That limit's very high, but we want to get rid of that and move with a NoSQL solution to be able to store unlimited representations of data and allow third-party systems or separate web apps to reach in and pull out that NoSQL piece. So the idea would be there'd be Elasticsearch on top. We wouldn't change that layer, but just the storage layer into NoSQL. For the NoSQL solution, we're looking at using Elasticsearch to store the content as well as index the content. We've had very good luck with Elasticsearch running fairly large clusters of Elasticsearch, maybe 8 servers, and having all of that replicated across all the different nodes. And the scalability there, I think we're a little bit wary of pulling in another large library into the project. The project's pretty big in itself. The GitHub downloads, a gig or something like that. It's big and there's a lot of history to it. But NoSQL solutions, I think, would be an important piece for us. We see bigger and bigger sites implementing dotCMS that need news-driven sites that have millions and millions. We have millions and millions of pieces of content currently with some of our clients, but it's getting bigger and bigger, and we just need to be able to maintain and support that. Any other thoughts or question, guys? Yep, in the back.
So I saw you adding a WYSIWYG to your content type.
That's right.
Could you
what you can do in dotCMS is basically add custom fields. And what a custom field is, I think our demo has an example. Custom field is just, again, it's just velocity, but you can call in any JavaScript library in it. You can call in a third-party WYSIWYG. You can take a look at one of the custom fields, and this is what we've been really playing with all day. It's not going to work. We don't have internet access. But it's a YouTube video custom field that'll actually reach out and pull, allows you to search YouTube via their APIs and pull in a YouTube video, including all the metadata, and drop it on your page. Any other thoughts or questions, guys? Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now, I think an important part of this presentation is we've brought over from the United States 10 Chromecasts that we're going to give away. And so what I've done, and I'll do this here, what I've done is in that API that we were working on, there's a method there called getWinner. Okay, and so what this is going to do is obviously return a number, and that number is going to be called and win a Chromecast. So let me drop that into a page, and we can hit that page and see who wins. Okay, so do a new page. Winner. And give that the template and add a new widget. This is a simple widget. And so what widgets are intended to be is velocity. It allows your web developers to add code, JavaScript, things that your end users shouldn't really be looking at or messing with. And reusable components that your end users can then select and drop them across the different parts of your site. So what I'm going to do here is get a winner, is add one, and the way you call it, again, is you just call the person tool, which that will give us a handle on the person tool Java object here, and then you just call winner. And we say here H1, and the winner is, right? All right. Is that it? Let's see if that works. One off here. And we say live. No, that didn't work. Hang on. What's that? Hang on. What? Oh, I did. Okay, thank you. Yep. It takes an argument. Okay. Get winner. And what's the max number, Jay? What are we at? 7? 107. Oh, 107. Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. Okay, so the first winner we have 103. We would have brought more of these. Okay. Oh, you're going to write them down? Okay, so the first winner is 103. The second winner is here, 61. Okay. You got it, Kuhn? Okay. And the third winner here is 5. 5, nice. All right. All right. And the fourth winner here, 24. 24, all right. I don't hear woohoos. Okay. The fifth winner here is 18. 18. Okay. The sixth winner here is 18? Oh, 37. All right. What number was that? Number 6 or number 7. Okay. Number 7 is Google. No. They've already won. All right. Yeah. Okay, number 7 is 35. All right. Number 8. All right, there's a woohoo. Number 8 is 53. Woohoo! All right. Number 9, 74. All right. Oh, you have number 9? All right. And number 10 is 34. Did we? Woohoo! All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time. And again, dotCMS open source. Feel free to download it, fork it, and go crazy. Thanks, everyone.